Hello, and welcome back to Lawrence Cinema. Well, this has been officially my first full year of using Letterboxd. Keeping a film diary is of course nothing new to me. I've kept film diaries for everything I've watched as far back as 2011. It's obviously not an essential thing to do if you like watching films, but I can tell you that it's always been extremely helpful for me in my filmic journey. So I made the move over to Letterboxd this year and went all in by recreating all my yearly film logs back to 2012 as individual lists, plus one massive list compiling everything that I can remember watching before 2012, in as close to a roughly chronological order as I can get. I'm sure that latter list sounds like complete madness to some, but as it's forming the basis of a video series that I'm currently writing for this channel, it seemed like a worthwhile endeavour for me. That list is currently set to private until I finalise the order a bit more and start getting the video series into action, but all other lists are public on there now, and for all intents and purposes I believe I've logged like 99% of all films that I can remember ever watching, which comes to a total just shy of 3,000 films in my past 34 years of existence. So if you're a Letterboxd user, or you're just curious for whatever reason to see what films I've seen and my thoughts upon them, then you can find my account on there as Lawrence Cinema. I've also started an Instagram and Facebook page for Lawrence Cinema too, with which I'll be posting the old film review as well as updates on my own personal filmmaking projects. So give them a look, or a follow, or a like, or whatever it is you do in the social media world these days. Anyways, I thought I'd have a little roundup of my thoughts on some of the films that I've seen this year. Rather than go month by month in the same kind of randomness that I watch some of these films, I've decided to split them into certain categories and sections. To kick things off, the recent films from the past year or two that I've seen on the big screen and the small screen.
Come to me.
The first film I caught this year at the cinema was on January 2nd, and it was Robert Eggers' take on the German silent horror classic Nosferatu. It was a visual treat, and it had an atmosphere akin to his debut feature The Witch, and it was an improvement over his slightly messy previous feature The Northman. The scenes of supernatural possession lent very heavily into the erotic subtext of the vampire mythos, and the lead actress did a really fantastic job. Some moments in particular remind me very much of Zwoski's cult masterpiece Possession, with their feverish intensity. The cinematography and sound design were top-notch too, as expected, and the look of the Count was pleasingly grotesque also. I did feel, however, that it was perhaps a little bit too long. I think shaving 15 minutes off would not have hurt it, and may have prevented one or two moments in the latter acts where I felt that it started to lose a little of its momentum. The Grand Guignol imagery in the final scenes did very much make up for that though, and overall, I would call it a very fine piece of modern gothic horror cinema.
I'm ready.
A little later in the year, after a long overdue rewatch of Danny Boyle's original 28 Days Later, which absolutely went up in my estimations this time around and is still just as visceral and impactful as when it was first made, I made my second trip to the cinema to watch 28 Years Later, which might just be the best new film I'd seen this year. It pretty much ignores Weeks and positions itself more as a direct sequel to the original, which I believe was a wise move. Right off the bat, with the opening scene of children huddled together watching Teletubbies on a late 90s CRT TV, I thought Boyle was paying homage to the final act of Threads by showing us that Teletubbies is all we have left now for entertainment. But of course this was quickly revealed to be a prologue set at the time of the first film. I appreciated it nonetheless though, as Teletubbies was genuinely kind of nightmare fuel really. Anyway, why do I think 28 Years Later was the best new film this year? Because it was fun, but also because it still managed to be big, bold and really creative. Big budget mainstream cinema has largely been too safe and too ineffective for a long time for my liking. That's why I loved that this film took creative risks. The Derek Jarman-esque use of spoken word and artsy editing, the Nicholas Roeg-style splicing of old film scenes and historical footage to contrast and inform the action, a 7-foot-tall infected sprinting across the countryside with primal urgency and his dick swinging right in your face. Those sorts of decisions would never have made the cut if a director with less clout was at the helm. It wasn't always a successful film with everything it tried. I wasn't a fan of the video game style impact shots captured on the 180-degree camera rigs. I also thought some of the character decisions were a little sketchy, and truth be told, I'm not 100% sure how I felt about that ending. But there was large sections of the film that were simply quite stunning, exhilarating, and on the whole just rather enthralling. And I'll take a flawed film that tries something different over a safe blockbuster any day of the week. The last new film I caught at the cinema was Predator Badlands. The Predator series has always tried something a bit different with each entry, but has never quite pulled off a scenario that has worked entirely as well as the first film did. Each film has some good ideas, and I've enjoyed them all to some extent, especially for the little extra additions to the creature lore and the mythos that each one has added. The AVP films notwithstanding. I even rather enjoyed The Predator, which everyone seems to hate. Granted, I was drunk on both occasions watching it. The director of this film also made the prequel entry, Prey, which was good for the most part too, and was incidentally another first time watch for me earlier this year. But I didn't like it quite as much as others did. I found some of the balletic action moments to be a little too Marvel-like, and a bit out of place with the better, more grounded moments in the film where it really excelled. Predator Badlands is a different kind of film for sure, but not one that worked all that well for me. It felt like nothing more than CGI-heavy Marvel or Star Wars set pieces with overly familiar character narrative arcs and story beats that have been done time and time again. The creature designs were really nice, the performances were fine, and certain scenes had some great ideas. I could tell there was plenty of reference points to old samurai films, and I did ostensibly like its ideas, but I felt no weight or gravitas to any of the story beats or action happening. I can certainly see why some have really taken to it, and I'm glad the film has done well in finding its audience, as the director seemed very passionate about the series and its lore, but I guess I just wasn't really the target audience for it.
Once upon a time, around the year 2003, there began a legend of bloody revenge.
And for my final cinema trip of the year, I went to see the limited cinema run of Kill Bill: The Whole Bloody Affair. As the theme of a lot of my filmic viewing choices for the past few months has been violent films that I watched at a very young age, including some revisits of The Terminator, RoboCop, The Crow, The Doom Generation and the original Predator, it seems very fitting that my last cinema viewing of the year was Kill Bill. Whilst the past couple of decades has greatly expanded my cinema taste, it has to be said that this film did influence a huge chunk of it. It really shone a great big spotlight on Asian cinema, and no doubt sparked a resurgence for it here in the West. And I no doubt owe that joy to Tarantino's referential magnum opus. I've mostly just fondly half remembered it as a bit of a gateway film on my journey through cinema. It probably helps that I've been on a nostalgia kick, re-examining the films that formed my taste in cinema, but I really appreciate Kill Bill a hell of a lot more than I expected to in this screening. For one thing, it took me right back to being 15 again, and for another, I appreciated the actual art within the referential nature of the film. I found that this film does with imagery, sound and cinematic ideas akin to what a successful hip-hop record does with samples, beats and lyrics. It collects, curates, slices and reappropriates them into something for a different audience. Whilst it adds another level and a certain kind of grounding to be familiar with some of the references, the film still works for audiences without them. I had a lot of fun revisiting this on the big screen. Yes, it is ludicrous at times, but it is also ludicrously entertaining. This version boasted an extended anime sequence, which was very nice to see, but probably not all that necessary compared to the shorter, more effective original segment. As well as the infamous House of Blue Leaves showdown scene, uncut and in full blood-spurting colour. That alone was worth the ticket price to experience. That scene in particular is an absolutely marvellous feat of action choreography, and seeing it filling every inch of my peripheral vision was a highlight for sure. Other highlights were the opening knife fight with Avisha Fox and the down and dirty brawl with Daryl Hannah. All those moments have a startling amount of gut-pounding physicality to them, something that I feel is getting harder and harder to come by in newer action films these days. Whilst it does have the same pacing issues and dialogue overindulgences in the second half that have always been there, the whole experience did not feel anything close to the 4.5 hour runtime. It really felt more like 2.5 hours.
This is what you get for fucking around with Yakuzas! Go home to your mother!
Made a career out of bodies. I'm so happy to be involved.
Involved?
It makes me feel so alive.
Outside the cinema, I also saw another few 2024 and 2025 films, most notably The Shrouds. I'm always game for a new David Cronenberg film. The man has carved an impeccable filmography, which includes not only some of the first examples of body horror cinema, but also the definitive examples of it. Cronenberg's worked through his visceral examinations of death, sex and technology's effect on the human body in his early horror work and moved into the cerebral territories of the mind's ability to escape reality, past trauma and violent identities in his later work. His latest film deals with familiar concepts of technology and death as it explores the idea of burial shrouds, which allow grieving users to watch their departed loved ones in their graves, giving them real-time visual access to them as they decompose. A macabre concept for sure, but one that interestingly examines the intimate and very personal individual nature of a person's grief process. Whilst a lot of directors of his stature could easily hone in on the nostalgia of recreating their past successes, it's refreshing to see that Cronenberg is still never tempted to do so. His films are almost always contemporary in their setting, and always very in the moment with technology and the human concerns with that technology's integration into their lives, as well as the fears of its exploitation. The Shrouds is very much in that mode of filmmaking, and as well as its unique exploration of grief, it taps into the dissociative power dynamics of our everyday relationship with technology. Just like his past couple of films, there is a jet black streak of satirical humour that creeps into the story at times, which is brilliantly offset against some of the film's more disturbing moments. There's a familiar icy cold detached vibe to the performances here, which you either will or won't gel with. But I thought Vincent Cassel was great, and I particularly liked Diane Kruger's 3 distinct performances here, as Cassel's wife, her conspiracy theorist twin sister, and the voice of Honey, Cassel's cartoon AI avatar. Guy Pearce's on-edge performance as the tech whiz brother-in-law is brilliant to watch also. It's not an easy film to recommend if you get easily frustrated by a lack of coherent narrative or resolution, but if you like films that think outside the box and ruminate on really thought-provoking ideas and concepts, then this may well be worth a look for you.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
What does this have to do with us leaving?
Everything.
I also took advantage of an Amazon Prime deal to watch a couple more films on the video service there too. Firstly with Heretic, which I rather liked. I've always thought Hugh Grant should return to horror. The Lair of the White Worm is one of the best things he's been in. Heretic was a well-written exploration of religious beliefs, as well as a curious cautionary tale of knocking on Hugh Grant's door late at night. Grant does an excellent job of translating his upper-class comedic smarm to creepy comedic smarm, in what has to be one of his best roles since About a Boy. I think the first half of the film was much stronger than the second half, but I still think it was a solid work, and stands out as one of the better horror flicks I've seen from the past few years.
Well, you hear Abbey Road? Abbey what?
As some of you might already know from browsing my video uploads, I went to 2000 Trees Festival this year, which I had an absolute blast at. Amongst the headliners were the controversial Irish rap trio Kneecap. I had not really listened to them prior to this, but they put on one hell of a show. I saw the film come up on Prime and thought, I'd give it a watch. And you know what? It was a really entertaining, captivating, funny and creative blend of comedy, crime drama and music biopic that tells a somewhat fictionalised version of the trio's underdog rise to fame story. The trio play themselves and prove that they are actually pretty damn good actors too. This is one that I very much recommend. Even if you're not that big a fan of the band or the music, the film is still a highly entertaining ride.
Get all away from you like that.
Special delivery. Hey! No more music.
There's no time to explain. There's a spaceship from another world in that clearing. And if I'm correct, they intend to take over the Earth.
Another film I caught was Explorer from Another World. I had zero expectations going into this throwback to 1950s sci-fi nonsense when it popped up on Prime, but it was actually really good fun. The amount of charm and charisma put into the whole vibe of this 45-minute mid-length feature was really endearing. Everything from the intentionally stilted acting down to the set dressing, costumes, dialogue, technicolor grading and creature design was just plain fun. It's just a really fun bit of campy sci-fi that I thoroughly recommend if you dig the sort of vibe of the films that it's going for. I believe the whole thing is up on YouTube for free too. I also briefly had a movie subscription, so I caught Flow, as it was a film from last year that really intrigued me. The fact that this was made entirely in Blender was quite fascinating to me. I didn't love it quite as much as I expected to, but I really appreciated the somber tone and wordless narrative. It reminded me very much of the French Studio Ghibli collab The Red Turtle, which was another wordless animated feature that harked back to the same silent film methodology of show don't tell. I felt Flow really captured the emotive energy of its animal protagonists well, in both the animation and the sound design. The subtle world building and the environment devoid of humans was great, but overall I did find my attention wavering a little bit in the second half. Perhaps this is one that I'll need to revisit again at some point to reappraise.
Morning, Gromit. How's my favourite pooch?
And lastly, on Christmas Day I watched Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl. I never got around to watching this on TV last year on account of the fact that I don't watch TV anymore and haven't done so in over a decade, so I thought I'd wait for the Blu-ray, which never came out, so Netflix it is then. There was nothing quite all that new here, to be honest. It's not quite as good as the classics, but it was still filled with some really entertaining gags, and at the end of the day, it's another Wallace and Gromit film, so what's not to like? Certainly a big step up from the slightly lackluster Chicken Run sequel.
It's you! Again!
Other new films that I saw but don't really have much to say about were The Thursday Murder Club on Netflix and Freakier Friday at the cinema. Both were perfectly fine and entertaining whilst they were on and had some decent casting, but I also thought neither were exactly as funny as they thought they were.
As teenagers, we have no power, but as adults, we can break our parents up for good.
And on that note, thanks for watching. Part 2 of this video, where I delve into the older films that I watched in 2025, will be up in the next few days.